Hey everybody, welcome to our first video lecture on persuasive strategies. In this video lecture, we'll examine three classical principles of persuasion, some techniques about how to motivate action by people who are neither inclined nor obligated to do what you want, that date back more than 2,000 years to this guy, Aristotle. Aristotle, as many of you know, was an ancient Athenian philosopher who wrote about a variety of topics, including persuasion. And Aristotle said that there are three main ways to persuade someone. You can appeal to logos, or logic. You can appeal to pathos, or emotion. And you can appeal to ethos, or credibility. And Aristotle said further that of these three, logos, or logic, is the most important. Your message must appeal to logos or logic, whereas it may appeal to pathos and ethos. In other words, logic is a requirement. It's absolutely essential, whereas appeals to emotion or credibility are merely optional. So let's dive into these three persuasive appeals and examine them in greater depth, beginning with logos or logic. Now, you can appeal to logos or logic in a variety of different ways. Perhaps most obviously, you can appeal to logos by supporting your claims with reason and evidence. That's right, huge surprise. If you are trying to write a persuasive message, you want to back up your claims, you want to back up your argument with facts and with research. However, in a business context, you want to be careful about how you support your argument. When you are supporting your claims with reason and with evidence, you want to put your evidence in context, and you want to avoid what we call death by numbers. So when I say put your evidence in context, what I mean is don't just throw evidence at your audience without first framing it, providing a context that helps them understand where this evidence comes from or how it connects to your argument. And when I say death by numbers, what I mean is, yes, of course, use data, use statistics to back up your claims, but don't just bombard your audience with numbers. Too many numbers can quickly become overwhelming, and if you overwhelm your audience with numbers, they're just going to check out and disengage. So choose the data, choose the numbers that you use to support your argument with a critical eye. Think about what the most effective data that you can use to support your point will be. You can also appeal to logos by anticipating and rebutting potential objections. This is a strategy that we've already discussed in our video lecture on persuasive message structure, but it's worth revisiting here. Basically, what you want to do when you're writing a persuasive message is you want to think about potential objections or counter-arguments that your audience might have to your proposal. You want to address those head on as a way of diffusing opposition to your idea or proposal. That's another effective way to appeal to logos. And then finally, you can appeal to logos by making your evidence intelligible and memorable. Just because you're making a reasoned logical argument doesn't mean that you can't try to make your evidence as appealing and vivid as possible. And to achieve that, I want to emphasize three techniques that will be particularly useful in a business context. So first, you can humanize statistics. Second, you can prefer concrete to abstract information. And finally, you can appeal to your reader's visual sense. So let's break these three approaches down, beginning with the importance of humanizing statistics. Now, imagine that you've got the results of a survey on employees' relationship to both their job and their employer. and you want to emphasize to your readers just how dire and unflattering these survey results are. Sure, you could just quote the statistics, the poll results, to your audience. You can say that of 2,000 polled employees, only 37% understand their organization's goals. You could say that only 1 in 5 are enthusiastic about those goals, that only 1 in 5 understand how their tasks relate to the organization's goals, that only 15% feel their organization supports them, and only 20% trust their organization. Now, simply reciting those results is already pretty powerful, but how much more powerful is it when we reframe these results in a context that people can more immediately and perhaps even emotionally relate to? What happens when we reframe these results not as a series of results about employees in a workplace, but rather as a series of results about soccer players on a soccer team? Then all of a sudden those poll results look like this. If a soccer team had these same scores on this poll, only 4 of the 11 players on the team could identify the goal that they're trying to score in. Only 2 of the 11 players would care which of the 2 goals they're supposed to score in. Only 2 of the 11 would know which position they play and what they're supposed to do in that position. And all but 2 of the players would be competing against their own team. We've taken those exact same results, but by putting them in a context that many of us have experienced firsthand, or at very least watched on TV, these results become so much more vivid and memorable. Here's another technique. You want to prefer concrete information to abstract information. Yes, sometimes making logical reasoned arguments requires us to invoke abstractions. But as soon as possible and as frequently as possible, we want to pivot to concrete information to make those claims more vivid and more memorable. So instead of saying something like, we need our new 727 to be the best passenger plane in the world, we instead want to say, our new 727 must seat 131 passengers. It must fly nonstop from Miami to New York City, and it must be capable of landing on runway 422 at LaGuardia. Concrete information is sticky. It sticks to our memory, and it's therefore more compelling and more persuasive, but it also gives our readers a concrete sense of what we mean when we use abstractions. It gives our readers a sense of what it means to us for a plane to be the best in category, right? And that's another reason why we want to prefer concrete information to abstract information. And lastly, you want to appeal to your audience's visual sense. If you find yourself writing a lengthy paragraph that's just chock-a-block with information, ask yourself if there's a way that you can represent that information in a more visually compelling form. So we can take the contents of this paragraph and very quickly and easily translate it into a table, which not only looks better aesthetically, but also helps our audience more quickly and easily digest the information at the heart of that paragraph. So enough about logos. Now let's talk about pathos or appeals to emotion. Now, the first thing you need to know about pathos appeals is that you should use them sparingly. The way that I think of it is that pathos is like nutmeg. It can be very appealing in small doses, but in large doses, it can become kind of poisonous, all right? It can make your writing feel manipulative or disingenuous. It can make it feel sappy or saccharine. And for all of those reasons, it can undermine your credibility as a writer. So use pathos appeals. They're very powerful and they can be very appealing, but they can also be dangerous if used incorrectly. Now, if you do choose to include pathos appeals, you've got a couple options at your disposal. So first, and most obviously, you can appeal to pathos by connecting to your reader's motives, their needs, and their fears. Think about who your reader is. Think about what they care about. Maybe it's a sports team, maybe it's their family, or a pet, or a social cause, and frame your argument in a way that intersects with those interests or concerns. In other words, write with empathy, which is ultimately just another way of saying write reader-focused messages. Think about who your reader is and write a document that meets those needs. You can also appeal to pathos by emphasizing benefits over features and experiences over facts. So yes, of course, you want to include hard evidence in your persuasive argument, but you also want to make that evidence come alive by framing it in the context of your audience's concerns and experiences. Imagine that you're trying to persuade an enthusiastic gamer to buy a particular computer. Sure, you could emphasize all of the bells and whistles on that computer. You could say that it's got an Intel Core i7-8809G CPU and blah, 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 all these other things. Or you could say that this is a powerful gaming system with whisper quiet fans and lots of ports. It's easy to upgrade with a compact, minimalist design. And the benefit of that second statement, where you're emphasizing the benefits of the bells and whistles, is that it helps your audience put themselves in the shoes of somebody who's using this device, to think about themselves enjoying this device. It allows them to imagine this device in their home office and how great it would look, how great it would sound, right? That's a powerful emotional appeal that you can blend quite easily and effectively with a more factual, concrete, logical appeal. Then lastly, let's talk about ethos appeals or appeals to credibility. You can most effectively appeal to credibility in writing by writing effectively and by developing your reputation off the page. If your message and your argument are well crafted and well constructed, you're going to have credibility. And if you have a good reputation, if you have a good rapport with your audience, your message is going to have credibility. And so the good news is that you can constantly be developing your credibility as a writer. You can do so by enhancing your communication skills, and you can do so by building good relationships with the people you're likely to communicate with. The bad news, however, is that it's difficult to make explicit ethos appeals in a piece of writing, say, for instance, a cover letter or resume, right? If you just start bombarding your audience with your experiences and your qualifications, it's going to come across as a little sad, a little desperate, right? So just develop your credibility off the page and have confidence that it will come across in your writing. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this video lecture. Please watch the other video lectures on persuasive strategies and persuasive appeals. And as always, thanks for watching.